What is up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And we are here with week 10. Yes, it is week 10 already. This is the Tuesday slate, a doubleheader on deck. If you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps a channel like this a ton, a small channel like this. Thank you if you've done that. It really does mean a lot, and I can't overstate how much it helps. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Always want to get that in there. Otherwise, last thing, we had a conflict, myself and Nate, with the recap video. So just briefly on that, it was an awesome week 9. The only real results that were questionable were what I did in Conference USA. So we'll have to right the ship as we talk about that through some of these weekday videos, largely just breaking my own rule, taking games early before injury reports were out, and then finding myself trapped in situations. So we're going to learn from that and use that information moving forward. Also, if you have requests, please leave them in the comments for games later in the week. All right, let's talk UTEP Kennesaw State. 10-point spread in favor of Kennesaw State, tied for first place in Conference USA. Big surprise for Kennesaw State. They're having an awesome year 2 in the FBS. The total is 51 points. UTEP, not so nice. Basically, what they did, they shot their shot at former 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson, and it did not go well. He has already been benched. And you can see that in their win-loss record. When you look at their victories, they have 2 of them. They beat Sam Houston State in their most recent contest, actually. Their only other win is against an FCS school. In between all that, they lose to Utah State by double digits. Obviously, they lost to Texas. UL Monroe, that was a close game, a 6-point game. Louisiana Tech by 19, and Liberty by 11 points. So in their most recent contest, got a good sample of Skylar Locklear under center. Pretty good yards per play advantage. The only real, data point to look at, the turnovers were still there. They just didn't have quite as many of them in that game against Sam Houston. That was a weird contest overall. Sam Houston had a turnover on downs at midfield, followed by a really weird sequence. UTEP had a turnover on downs at their own 31. Sam Houston fumbled on the very next play. It was returned all the way to the 7. UTEP threw an interception on the very next play after that. Then Sam Houston had a turnover on downs before the end of half. A couple weird stuff in the second half. UTEP had a field goal blocked. UTEP muffed a punt. So this probably could have been even worse. Just a weird game overall. For Kennesaw, very impressive. And it started out week 1 where they only lost by 1 point to Wake Forest. Since then, they lost to Indiana. That'll happen, but beat Merrimack, Arkansas State, Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, and Florida International. So UTEP's coming off a bye. Kennesaw had their bye in week 8, so they played last week, and they played FIU. It was just a downright explosive beating. FIU defense nowhere to be found. It was continual explosive play after explosive play for Kennesaw. But unfortunately for them, they left the game very injured. In that contest, they lost Amari Odom at quarterback, Coleman Bennett at running back, Tylen Dunlap on the defensive line. Jaden Kelly was already hurt at linebacker, Garland Benyard at linebacker, and Alexander Ford at safety. A lot of them were called day-to-day, which doesn't really help us. The only clarity we got was Garland Benyard, their linebacker. He's probably going to be out. His sounded a little more severe. But UTEP, they're very injured as well. Even coming out of their bye, there's some players to watch. Hassan Wilson at running back. They've been without Cam Thomas and Jaden Smith for a while. Neither of them are going to play. They were extremely shorthanded at tight end. Judah Ezinwa and Luka Matamoros were both out last time we saw this team. And then Joshua Rudolph and Neil Campbell at linebacker and corner. That Neil Campbell one is definitely one to watch. He's their best defensive back, and he got injured in-game last time we saw UTEP play. So let's start with UTEP's offense. Skylar Locklear has taken over for Malachi Nelson. He has a 66% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt. It honestly hasn't been that much better. 3 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, 4 interceptions. It is still better than Nelson somehow, which is incredible. And you're getting more mobility with Locklear, which definitely unlocks a different part of your offense. I don't think that's how they want to play. This has been an air raid offense, for better or worse, the last 2 years, largely worse. And Locklear doesn't exactly fit that scheme, but he definitely has been an upgrade over what Nelson has provided. The skill players are very injured. We mentioned already they lost their top two receivers, which has kind of just left them with Kenny Odom. And then you're seeing them rotate receivers on a weekly basis. It's been even difficult to predict who's going to get snaps for this team at receiver. And then we mentioned Wilson's been banged up at running back. So hopefully the bye helps him return because not a ton behind him. They'll use Locklear in the run game. He's up to 6 yards per carry. That's definitely helped, but it's not a strong rushing attack for this UTEP team on paper. And some of that stems from their offensive line. They have one above average player, that's James Williams. And it's not like they've played a lot of great defensive lines either. They have one decent defensive line on paper face, and that was Texas. One thing they did last time we saw them, Jake Utley started to play less, and we saw Tony come in the game and play more. I'm not sure if that was injury or benching, but it definitely would help if they did that. Jake Utley's been a disaster for them at right tackle. You're facing a Kennesaw defense, which comes in 69th. This is a really hard data point to evaluate. They played one top 100 defense. That was Indiana. But they've also allowed over 8 yards per attempt to Indiana, of course, FCS Merrimack, and FIU. They also allowed 6 yards per carry to FIU, but a lot of that was just garbage time stuff. They've been better up front compared to their secondary. So this is a weird situation to watch because UTEP tried to be a pass-first offense. They tried to run the air raid. They failed. And they've sort of leaned into the run more with Skylar Locklear. And that is not how you want to play Kennesaw. From an offensive perspective, you look at the best players for this team. Some of them are injured now. Tylen Dunlap, he definitely is the most important injury to watch. But Barron Hobson, he's an excellent linebacker. They did lose Garland Benyard, which should weaken them a little bit. But in the secondary, the only piece that is definitively above average is Caleb Offord. So I'm just not sure UTEP really has the pieces to consistently take advantage of this unless we get an injury report that really breaks our way with guys like Dunlap potentially missing the game at defensive tackle. For the Kennesaw State side, Amari Odom, we only know he's day-to-day. If he plays, Kennesaw State should be able to move the ball. He has a 71% completion, 10 yards per attempt, 7 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. He did an awesome game against FIU before going down, only taken 5 sacks, and it could be better. The receivers have dropped 8.1% of his passes. What you can say is I'm not sure Dexter Williams moving to him as the backup is a huge drop-off. It definitely is a drop-off. 56.5% completion, 6.7 yards per attempt. He only has 1 big-time throw and 4 turnover-worthy plays. Also an 8.5% drop rate for him. But both these quarterbacks are very mobile, and that's how the offense succeeds. Over 4 yards per carry for both of them. They complement Coleman Bennett, who's also banged up in the run game here. But if Coleman Bennett can't go, they're deep at running back, and both quarterbacks have the ability to use their legs. So I'm not sure the rushing attack should be compromised, even if a guy or two misses here. In the receiving game, you have an absolute stud in Gabriel Benyard, brother of Garland. He's at 495 receiving yards. And Christian Moss, he's been a solid number 2. He's a P4 transfer. So I think the Kennesaw State skill players, even though banged up, should be able to have success. The offensive line, it's similar to UTEP's, honestly. They're not great. Their tackles have been atrocious. They haven't played a good slate of defensive lines. It's been better than UTEP's face, so that at least is worth mentioning. But you have a strong interior. Your center is good, and Josiah Chenault. It's just your tackles and Jadarius Lee and Nikola Milovac have been atrocious. Can UTEP take advantage of that? Probably not. They've played an okay slate of defenses, I guess. But still, Aiden Armenta got them for 9.9 yards per attempt. Bryson Barnes all the way back early in the season, 8.3. It's been a little better on the ground. UL Monroe, 6.1 yards per carry. They were the only team above 4.2. So UTEP does have a decent run defense. They've been beat in coverage, and now they might be down their only good corner, Neil Campbell, that needs to be watched. The other difference-making players are Micah Davey and Solo Barnes. I'm just not sure we've seen them against enough good defenses to really think anything is super above average for this team. On paper, they have a micro advantage in the pass rushing game against that Kennesaw State offensive line, but I don't think they're going to be able to take advantage of this. Mathematically, we do make this just inside of 10, and UTEP, it looks like, is taking a little bit of money, seeing some juice towards that side. But there's a lot of injuries in this game. I'm not sure you can play a side until you get the injury report, and this is even worse than what we saw in some of the Conference USA games last week. We're talking a lot of difference-making players on both sides with injuries that we just don't know about. So we'll sit and wait this out. Probably we'll make a play once we get news on some of these guys at kickoff, but that's where we stand right now. Second game, we go to the Sun Belt. Previous game of the year, coming into the year, a lot of people had this circled as the game of the year in the Sun Belt. James Madison takes on Texas State as a 6.5-point favorite, a 55.5 total. To get here, it's been awesome for James Madison. Their only loss came to Louisville by 14 points, covered a spread in that game too. They beat Weber State, Liberty, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Louisiana, and Old Dominion, most of those by double digits. Their closest call coming against Georgia State in those victories. Meanwhile, Texas State, really disappointing team. They lose to Arizona State, of course, but since then they've dropped games to Arkansas State, Troy, and Marshall. All of them very close. All of them within single digits. They lost to Arkansas State by 1 point with a 57% post-game win expectancy. They lost to Troy by a touchdown with a 67% post-game win expectancy. And they just lost to Marshall in overtime. Their post-game in that contest was 46%. Living dangerously, and it's cost them in all of their close games. Their wins came against Eastern Michigan, UTSA, and Nichols. To get here, James Madison is very healthy. Unless something pops up, the only injuries they've been dealing with are at running back, and they've been able to find players routinely to come in and fill in. For Texas State, Talek Lockett was banged up in their last game. I don't think that matters. Then Will Mitchell and Ryan Nolan at defensive back. Pretty healthy game. For James Madison, Alonzo Barnett is the quarterback. 61% completion percentage for him, 6.9 yards per attempt, 8 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays, 2 picks. Only taking 8 sacks on a 26.5% pressure rate is pretty solid for him. But this team is just limited aerially. It's been a pretty tough go of it when they've been in clear passing situations, which is why you see their pass rate drop all the way to 127. They haven't needed to throw the ball much as they've been beating teams and playing with a lead, but that is a concern if they get down in a contest and need to play with a clear negative game script. As far as the skill position players go, mention the injuries to George Pettaway and Ayo Adeyi. They've been in and out of the lineup. It hasn't mattered. They've just gone right to Wayne Knight, 6.6 yards per carry. Jordan Fuller, 5.3. It's solid. They don't have any good receivers. Landon Ellis leads this group, 400 yards. It's just a lackluster unit that's been continually, every year in the portal, they just lose guys. And this has been one position they haven't backfilled the best. So the pass game overall is a question for me, but the run game, absolutely elite, and that starts with the offensive line. This is a good unit. Now, they've only played one pass rush ranked higher than 90th. That was Louisville. They've only played one pass rush, or I guess run defense ranked higher than 60th. They've not faced any good defensive lines, but I'm not really sure you're going to see that with Texas State anyway. So you come into this game. Pat McMurdy has been awesome at tackles. Zach Greenberg, an elite center. I don't think they really have a ton of problems with Texas State's defensive line. And it's a weird unit. Technically, the edge is probably the best unit for that Texas State defensive line, but they have not faced an offense ranked higher than 75th. And this defense overall still comes in 102nd. So, yeah, you look at the players. Okay, Khalil Alexander, Tamir Jackson, probably your two best guys. They're both edge rushers for Texas State. That's technically an advantage, but then what else do you have? Traylon Payne at linebacker. The secondary is horrible. They're 122nd. They allowed 10.4 yards per attempt to Tucker Kilcrease, 8.5 to Carlos Del Rio Wilson, and that's just recently. They're rotating wildly. You're going to see 10 guys play back here. The only one who is well above average is Javis Minot, and he's not even playing a full-time role. Man, with a run defense ranked 79th and a coverage unit ranked 122nd, even though James Madison doesn't really have any interest in throwing the ball, I think you can have success here. It's just bad defense. Meanwhile, on the other side, the offense is certainly not the problem for Texas State. Brad Jackson, new starter, has been awesome for them this year. 69% completion, 9.3 yards per attempt, 12 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays, only 2 picks. If you want to poke a hole in his game, he does take a decent amount of sacks, 13 of them on a 22% pressure rate. He's up to a 25.5% pressure to sack ratio. That's just too high. He needs to have a better feeling in the pocket, but that's about it as far as negative plays for him go. This team recently started using more 12 personnel, which was an interesting wrinkle to their game. Typically, they haven't done that, but maybe that is just to embrace the run where they are 42nd in rushing. Brad Jackson's involved on the ground at QB. Lincoln pairs at 5.2 yards per carry. Greg Burrell comes in not far behind as a change of pace. Both of them have been very efficient. And in the pass game, you kind of have two good weapons in Bo Sparks, Chris Dawn, but not much else. Sparks is up to 674 receiving yards. Dawn's at 505. This is another team in the G5 that's kind of been bled as far as talent in the receiving game, and they've not exactly backfilled it. They've missed on some transfers, like Maven Anderson hasn't quite lived up to expectations. It's good. It's not great for Texas State. And then on the offensive line, this is similar to James Madison. They've not faced a pass rush ranked higher than 74th, but they've also been very good. Emeka Abigbo is the only player who's been a disappointment for this team, and he plays guard. Other than that, Dorian Strong, Sully Burns are an awesome G5 tackle duo. They didn't have Talek Lockett for the whole game last time out, but even his replacement, Justin DeLeon, came in and played well. So it should be another good offensive line. The problem is they're facing a good James Madison defense. This is one of the reasons James Madison has been in all these games and won. They can lean on the run game and lean on their defense. They're top 32 in every single major metric: run defense, pass rush coverage, total defense. And they've played a couple good offenses. The only time they've really gotten beat was against Colton Joseph. 10 yards per pass attempt for him. But they still were able to generate turnovers and win that game by double digits. Otherwise, Lunch Winfield for Louisiana had 8.4 yards per attempt. But that game was weird. Lunch Winfield had like three big plays. One of them, James Madison defenders ran into each other. So I tend to side more with the data point that no other quarterbacks have been above 6.9 yards per attempt, and no rushers have been above 3.8 yards per carry. Very good up front. Trent Hendrick, linebacker, Amar Thomas on the edge. You have solid defensive backs and DJ Barksdale, Jacob Thomas. This is good defense. I do think they have the edge over this Texas State offense because of their defensive line, especially against a good but unproven Texas State offensive line, we'll call it. This is still a tough game, and mathematically, we do not show a lot of value. So right now, this is just a lean towards James Madison. But to go in and give you the actual math on the game from the back end, we make this minus 6.8, and we make the total coming in at 56.6. So maybe if you wanted to play something, you could look to an over. Pace is not really in your favor. Generally, when you have this discrepancy in pace, like James Madison coming in 123, Texas State 15th, the team that has the slower pace has an easier time dictating the overall pace of the game. So I'm not in love with an over. Honestly, I could maybe be talked into the James Madison side more than anything else, but we're going to wait on injuries and see where this game comes in. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll be back soon talking the main slate and everything else. Until then, good luck. We'll see you guys later.